Hi, everybody. I'm Coach B with Living the Dream Coaching. And once again, I'm your host for today's Insights interview that will take us into the mind of a successful business owner and his success mentality. Because you're all on your own personal journey to business alignment. That's why I say you're living the dream. It's so important that you develop your own success mentality acumen. And I'm confident that these videos in this video series will be a special tool for helping you do just that. Back on the first day of 2020, an email hit my inbox promoting something that was called Instant Manifestation Secrets. And the man who created the Instant Manifestation Secrets audio series is Croix Sather. I went ahead and purchased the audio series that morning, and now it's almost 16 months later since doing that, and it has changed my life. Croix is my guest today. In fact, when I recorded step lesson 1 of my 12 sequential steps to starting and launching a business successfully, I said on that first recording that I would give every new member, every new beginner entrepreneur who chose to become a client of mine, their own copy of Instant Manifestation Secrets, 15 months before I had even spoken with Croix. Today's interview will consist of me asking Croix, who's traveled all across America and all over the world for that matter, questions about his story, how he came up with the idea for his business, how he got started, what challenges he had along the way, and how he overcame them. And most importantly, what he now feels is the key principles and success laws that helped him accomplish so much in achieving his success. Croix Sather is a well-known athlete runner, public speaker, successful author, and business entrepreneur, and a coach of coaches. And like I said, Croix's graciously given me his time today to become a big part of my Insights video series. And so let's bring him on right now. Croix, welcome. It's so exciting to have you join us today.
Great to be here, Coach B. Thank you.
Well, fantastic. To start this off, Croix, let's begin by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, where you grew up, and what schools you went to, whatever. Did you have children, etc., so everyone can have a little bit of an idea of who you are and what your background is. And then we can get into the when, how, and why you decided to create Instant Manifestation Secrets. I think it was more than 10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Well, the short version of the story of my life is I literally grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. So I grew up in an area that wasn't horribly impoverished, but it was definitely the poor side of town, as compared to the people who were on the other side of the tracks, which was the extremely wealthy side of the town. And this is in one of the most wealthy areas in the entire country. So the differences was rather dramatic. And growing up in a blue collar family, barely able to put food on the table at times, and going through the type of life that poor people do, like we were, I learned a lot of the negative mindset around money, around life, around success, around how wealthy people take advantage of broke people, and all these different kinds of things. And I got to see that. But the clients that my dad worked for as a carpenter were all these wealthy people just a few miles away. And so as I became a teenager and started working for my dad and became a carpenter, because my brothers were carpenters, my father was a carpenter, my grandfather was a carpenter. So what, of course, happened with me?
Sure.
I became a carpenter. And so I started working for my dad as just a young teenager. And I started to see that these people weren't what I was, the things that I was hearing about wealthy people wasn't matching up with what I was seeing with wealthy people. They were generous, they were wonderful, they were nice, they were helpful, they were all these the exact opposite of everything I heard. So the disconnect confused me at first, but then I started to question, why do some people become wealthy, and why do some people stay perpetually broke? Why are some people healthy and fit while other people are perpetually overweight and struggling with their health? Why are some people happy, but yet other people are constantly moaning and groaning and complaining and unhappy? And so I started this curiosity factor rather than judging. And that's been with me all my life. And that's led me to where I am today. After almost 20 years as a carpenter, I eventually decided that wasn't the life I wanted to do for the rest of my life. My dad was beat up in his 50s. All the guys he worked with were beat up in their 50s, early 60s. And that wasn't the life that exactly. It wasn't the life that I wanted. I was good at it. Financially, it was good to me, but it wasn't where I wanted to be.
Where was it that this was taking place? What part of the country?
Just outside of New York City,
Ah,
just
okay.
north of it.
Okay. Back on the top east coast of the country. That's good.
So all the Wall Street people, the big corporate head honchos, they all lived in our area, very very close to where we live. So Bedford, New York, Katona, Greenwich, Connecticut, very close by. So all those super wealthy people right next to where we were, which was comparatively speaking, certainly we were the very poor.
So how old were you at the time that you made a decision to do some magic you're going to talk about, to do some exciting things with your life? How old were you at the time?
I started wondering when I was probably 12, 13, 14 years old.
Wow.
It's the seeds was planting there. My family, when I grew up, my family, nobody had graduated high school, no less college, but nobody had
Wow.
graduated high school until I did. It took me 15 years, but I did graduate. But my curiosity was back when I was even a little boy. I used to, the only thing we had to read were National Geographic magazines. And I'm not sure where we got them because I know my parents didn't buy them, but they were in the house. And so I'd look at these pictures and I'd read these articles about these people who would go to Africa and South America and Asia and study these different cultures and these tiny little indigenous groups. And that always fascinated me, but I never thought I could ever do that. I didn't have the education. I didn't have the people that could help me get there. And I just purely didn't think it was possible when I was a child.
So how did
But
this
those
dream, and as a teenager is what you're describing, how'd that kind of
yeah.
emerge and fire off in you? What happened?
Well, I became a carpenter like my dad, and then by the time I was 24, I actually my dad started working for me because he was kind of moving semi towards retirement, and I started getting the jobs. I was doing them on the side, and my jobs kept getting bigger and getting bigger and getting bigger. So eventually, my jobs got big enough to support not only me but to hire my dad. And
Wow.
then I started investing in real estate. Bought my first house at 24, my first investment property at 25, and then I bought a couple others shortly after that. So I was hungry and I was driven, but the only thing I thought I could do was be a carpenter. My mind hadn't expanded to that point. As Oliver Wendell Jones says, a mind once expanded can never go back to its original size. And so my mind was already getting bigger. And so I could never go back to just being, working as a carpenter, because then I started running the business and I started investing. And then every step was a little bigger. As I read more, I listened to audiobooks, I read books, and I wanted more. I just simply wanted more, but I had no idea what that would be.
Was it a leap, taking a leap of faith just out of the blue, or it grew over time? And because you obviously were an entrepreneur by going into construction work and hiring your dad, and did you have other helpers? So in a sense, you had the entrepreneurial spirit from a very young age, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, for two reasons, two very important reasons. One was we were so poor that to get anything that I wanted, I started working when I was 13. And so little side jobs, paper routes, cleaning people's leaves off their yards, anything I could do to make a few bucks.
Wow.
Literally, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have anything other than what my parents gave me, which they didn't have enough to give us extra. So there was just food on the table and a roof over our head in this tiny little apartment. It was nice, and my family situation was great. Parents are loving, wonderful people, but they just didn't have anything extra. But my dad went out into his own business. I was probably 7, 8 years old, I guess. I don't know, maybe 9. And then by the time I became 12, 13, 14, I can remember my dad telling me over and over and over, my worst year in business on my own was better than my best year in business with Gunderson, which was the name of the guy he worked for.
Yes.
And so I
Wow.
heard that over and over and over, and that got implanted in my head. So I'm like, screw school. I didn't even want anything to do with it. I did graduate high school, but I didn't want anything to do with it. And so I finally got out of there. But then I started realizing is that I'm just going to be a carpenter for the rest of my life if I don't do something different than my dad and my uncle and my grandfather and everybody else did. So that's when I started reading books, audiobooks, anything I could do. And another thing is when we got to these rich people's houses, I would, when they were amiable to this, I would ask them, what's the secret? What are you doing?
That's interesting, because that was my next question. Did you ever have a mentor? I mean, in the construction business, your dad kind of helped and grew that process in your head that way. But going to these rich folks, was there any one of them that you latched onto as a mentor or coach to help you sort out the steps of starting, growing, and launching your dream that way?
There was a couple of them that were helpful, and one that semi coached me, semi mentored me, a little different than I understand it now, but he was helpful, and he would take my calls and do things for me. But they also planted a seed into me of several people. One was a guy who was in his 70s, made a lot of money, lived in a really, really amazing house, but yet he still cut his own lawn. So I asked him, why are you cutting your own lawn?
Okay.
And he said, for two reasons. He says, one, it's the only good exercise I get that I enjoy. So it keeps me healthy and fit. And then I also save money. Why waste money if you don't have to? So I get the health benefit out of it, and I get a good, clean cut
There
lawn.
you go. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, wow, you don't have to spend money if you don't want to, like if you enjoy doing those things. But the other one was a guy who was a multi-millionaire back in the 80s, and he was self-made. This guy was as rough as you get. He cursed all over. He was like out of a movie. He was so harsh and hard on the outside. Big guy too, really, really big guy. But he was a teddy bear, and he was driven. And he would also tell us is, you know what, you got to go out into your own business, and you got to do this, and you got to do this, and you got to do this. And he's one of the guys I talk about in my program. That was Cronenberg, and saying rich people think different.
Yes. Well, I will say this, before we get into the instant manifestation secrets and the launch of that business and that kind of thing, obviously some big things happen to you in between that I'd like you to talk about, and that's your marathons and that help shape who Croix is. So why don't you inform us a little bit about that, and then you can lead into how that spawned onto Instant Manifestation Secret Series.
Well, it's interesting. As I started to read, the Dennis Waitley's, the Zig Ziglars of the world back then, the grandfathers of personal development and self-help, they called it self-help back then. That's how long ago it was. And listening to these guys and reading these guys' books, I used to be a closet personal development guy. So like I would listen to it when I was in the car by myself, or I'd put my earphones on because everybody made fun of me. They teased me. Like, why are you listening to that self-help garbage? But I still listened to it. I didn't care because I loved it. It filled me up. It was like a drug almost, because it made me feel good. It made me want to be, do even better for myself. And so after listening to these guys, I kept hearing a couple of similar things over and over and over, no matter who it was. The same thing was in the Bible. The same thing was in some of the Asian studies I was doing. And so I kept hearing the same thing over and over and over. And basically it came down to, what would you do if you knew you would succeed?
Wow. Great question.
So if failure wasn't possible, what would you do? And I still didn't know what it was at that point, but that question was in my head. So I was trying new businesses on the side. I was doing different things. I was investing, doing all these little things. But then I had heard about a guy who ran across America. I'm like, that is the coolest thing I have ever heard of. But I wasn't a runner.
That's not a cool thing from Mr. Fatty here. That would scare me. But you latched onto that. That's amazing.
I forget what the phrase is, but like when something sings to you, you've got to answer that call.
Yes.
And so that thing just for some reason excited me, but I wasn't an athlete at the time. I was fit from my life and stuff like that. I wasn't, maybe I was a few pounds overweight, but I wasn't really overweight, but I was a couch potato. And I worked all day, I worked hard, and then I went home and I literally sat on the couch at night. So when I heard this idea, I didn't know any better. They say naive is bliss, being naive is bliss or something like that. It was because this guy that I had done it, he was a professional runner, but I didn't know this. Wow. And so I thought, well, if he did it, why not me? But instead, most people say, why me? Why not? How about us asking why not me?
Great point. Great point.
And so I started training. I wasn't a runner, so at 1 year of training, a year later, it's actually a little less than a year later, I was in California starting the first of 100 marathons. So 100 marathons in 100 days. So one marathon per day, running to the next place and the next place until I ran all the way back to my hometown of New York.
So you're basically talking about a 26-mile or so hit each day, 26-mile marathon. Is that about the range?
On average, yes. It was a little over 26 miles.
Yeah.
And it was the year of training, because if you run one, most people will train a year just to run one marathon. Yeah. But I wasn't running one. I was running one a day. So I had to train differently. So the idea of that was being, how do you preserve as much energy as possible? So you're running slower, you're doing other things differently. And so when I trained for a year, I still wasn't trained nearly enough. So those first 5 or 6 weeks was still my training. And so I get into day 21, which is the day my body shut down. So I had already run 20, well, almost 21 marathons. I was
Wow.
finishing up the last 5 miles, and my body shut down, and that was in Las Cruces, New Mexico,
Oh,
which is kind of ironic in a way, or I don't know, serendipitous maybe, because Las Cruces, Cruz means cross. Croix, my name, my first name, also means cross.
yes.
So I don't know if that was, some higher power or not,
You
but
call
who knows?
Providence right there. Yeah.
But I have 5 more miles to go. I sit down on the curb. It's 10 o'clock at night, and I can't do anything else. I rest a few minutes. I get up. I walk, I don't know, maybe several hundred meters or something, quarter mile. I sit back down,
Ugh.
rest for a while, get up, and I keep doing the same thing over. Eventually, I'm putting my legs up against a wall, trying to make them feel better. It's not working. But what could I have done? I could have called my crew, because I had a crew with me, of course, taking care of me. I could have called them up and say, "Hey guys, come get me. I'm done for the day. It's I've had enough." But what would have happened if I would have called them up and said, "Come get me"?
Yes. Yes. You had a
It
war
would
in
have
your
been
mind going on.
a war in my mind, my soul, my body, everything. It literally was. And so I couldn't call them up and quit on my mileage for that day, because if I did that, the next day would have been easier to
Easier.
give up a
Yeah.
few miles. And the next day would have been easier to give up a few miles. And before you know it, I'm only running halfway across America, not all the way. So, but worse than that, I would have been giving up on my goal. But even worse than that is I would have been giving up on my dream.
But
Or I'm sorry,
Croy,
giving up.
everybody stops on goals. Everybody quits sometime, and then they get over it. It's not that big a deal, or is it? It is. It is a
It,
big deal to give up on something like that, isn't it?
if it's important to you, yeah, it's everything. That's you're not quitting on your goal. You're quitting on yourself. And I had promised myself that I would never do that again. Because like everybody else, we all quit on ourselves at some point. And my life wasn't easy growing up, and I made a lot of mistakes and a lot of struggles, a lot of trouble with the police, trouble with other things. And so I made a promise to myself somewhere along the way when I got into this personal development stuff, all this woo-woo garbage that people call. And I decided I'm never going to give up on myself again. So I pick myself up, I walk, I sit down, I pick myself up, I walk, I sit down, and I keep doing that until 4 hours later, 2 in the morning, I get back to the RV, fall asleep before my head hits the pillow, and I sleep 5 hours to start the whole thing over the next
That
day.
4 hours covered how many miles?
5, which should have only taken an hour.
Yes, and somehow something in here, I suspect, pushed you through that to stay at it. I mean, a spurt and stop, but it was just an amazing thing that you got that manifested and pushed you through that 4 hours. That is just amazing, Croy, to me. That's something else. Your thoughts were a big part of that, I suspect.
Yeah, certainly there is that internal motivation that I had built up to that point. So a year of training and getting out and training for all those hours you have to and you don't want to, that builds it up. All those things I was studying, that's all part of it. That's part of the journey. But I can't take all the credit for it, because there was certainly, I had the crew that I was paying for to be there. I had not only the 4 people in the RV with me, but I also had other people working remotely to make this happen.
They were all watching in what this guy's going to do. Wow.
It was all on social media, although social media was really early back then. There was still thousands of people watching me. I was on the news every few days. And so I had more than me. There was a lot of outward accountability.
Yes.
But there was also what my friend calls the drop dead point. Or a drop dead goal, either one. And so that is that I had to be back in New York on a specific day because of the way we had everything scheduled.
Yeah.
And I had to be in a new place every day, because I was also, not only was I running every day, I was also giving a motivational talk to groups that are in challenge. So wounded warriors, addiction centers, homeless shelters, the United
Every day
Way.
you gave a speech at the end of the day type thing.
In the morning, actually. So every morning I'd start with
okay.
a speech, and then I'd run in the afternoon.
Wow. Well, you did that for like 100 days. Is that what it was? And 100 marathons and
100 days, 100 marathons, and 100 speeches. Yep.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this. When you, we don't need to get into the cost, because I know there was cost to get this and get the crew, and you saved up whatever you did to do it, sponsors, whatever. But question that everybody's waiting to hear. Did you finish the 100? Obviously you did. And what did that feel like when you hit that mark and finished that 100th marathon?
Well, it was interesting because as that day 21 was the worst day, or one of the worst days anyway, and so my body was deteriorating But then it started to get better and stronger, but I didn't feel it yet. So this is kind of like somebody who's on a weight loss diet. It's like, the weight's not coming off. But if you're doing the exercises and eating well, even though you don't see it, and it could be weeks, for me, running, it literally was weeks that I felt worse and worse and worse. But what was really happening in the background is that my body was getting stronger and stronger, just like a person who loses weight. Is if they're doing the right things, they're getting better.
The changes are happening. Be faithful. They're happening.
Exactly. And so it was
cool. Now, at that point, when you finished this whole thing and you went on TV shows I know about and did interviews and that kind of thing, when did this instant manifestation concept dream hit you and emerge within you? Or was that something you would think about before you started this? Or was that something that came as a fruit of such a unique accomplishment?
I guess that would be kind of a fruit of my labors eventually, because the run was 10 years ago now. Instant manifestation was 2 years ago, but prior to instant manifestations, I had other products and I wrote books and other things. So being that the law of attraction is so popular, I took a lot of the stuff that I teach and kind of packaged it into the law of attraction, because they're all sort of the same thing. It's just different languages we're using.
Sure.
So whether I'm talking pure personal development, the kind of like the real like traditional stuff like Dennis Waitley, or I'm talking law of attraction, it's actually all the same thing. We're all saying the same thing. We're just using slightly different words.
I have a little statement that I say about the law of attraction. It's so exciting to hear you say that. Is the law of attraction to me is you put your dream out there, you put your thoughts out there, and you attract into the portal of your mind the vision, the dream, the things you're excited about, and through manifesting and imagination, that kind of thing, what that is, you come up with the task, and by doing the task, you manifest it into the world of the physical. So attracting into the portal of your mind, manifesting into the world of physical. That's just words for some unique ways. It's not attraction, is not sitting there and say, okay, I want to attract a big car and then sitting on your butt doing nothing. That's not how it comes, is it?
No, that's in fact that's in my books, and I believe I also added it into my Instant Manifestation Secrets program. Is that you can't sit on the couch eating potato chips and soda and expect to get a 6-pack ab. It just doesn't happen. You can't sit on your couch, after your divorce. You can't sit on the couch and not go out and meet people and expect the soulmate to show up in your living room. It just doesn't happen. You've got to go out and do it. But what happens with people who are actually going out there and doing the things that move them closer to their goals and dreams is they become lucky. And the harder they work, the luckier they get. And that's another way of saying the law of attraction. So when you're moving towards the things you're wanting, your goals and dreams, when you're moving towards that, the universe, God, source, it will conspire to help you. Because now this is a woman on a mission. And so everything is going to align for you, because the energy that you have moving towards something is going to attract other things towards you. It's kind of like the comet that goes by. It attracts other things with it as it's going by. It doesn't just fly through space on its own. It's that magnetic force of it moving brings other things with it.
Well, what kind of steps did you take to lay the foundation for starting your? You said it was 10 years ago on this amazing experience that you had that you made happen, and then 2 years ago or so, Instant Manifestation Secrets. So in between, you had started tools and products. What kind of steps did you take to lay the foundation to start that kind of business? Or did you jump right into securing customers or clients off the bat? In other words, were you comfortable with asking people to pay you money for your art series or whatever? I'd like to get a little sense of someone who's thinking about starting their business, what they should be thinking about, having you done that, looking back, what kind of a foundation should they lay?
Okay, the really, really frank, honest answer, the raw answer, is that I had no clue 10 years ago how to make this business work. Carpentry, I was good at. I made a lot of money in carpentry, investing property. That was easy for me. I don't know why, but it was just easy for me financially. But when I moved into this expert world, books, audio programs, things like that, I didn't know how to do it. So when I ran across America and I was on the news and had all this YouTube channel with all these views and everything, I thought people were just going to hire me and pay me money.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for the phone to ring, and I got nothing. And then I went in and ran across Death Valley and set a world record running through there, figuring that, okay, I'll do something else, and then I'll really get the traction, and then my phone will be ringing off the hook. And after I did that, my phone was absolutely silent. I got nothing.
Wow.
So then after a year of that, I was like, okay, I've got to do something different. And so that's when I started putting different stuff on YouTube and marketing. I got 2 TEDx talks, which are responsible for a lot of momentum for me.
Sure.
So
Connections with
why,
lots of people, lots of eyeballs.
lots of eyeballs, which led to a lot of speaking engagements that paid a lot of money.
And didn't you do and write a book as well?
I did. I did write a book, relatively successful.
But you
that
wrote
was
a book in the process of all this to get it out of your head and onto paper for others to read. That's exciting. But those connections with the TED Talks and those discussions started bringing some dollars, and obviously learning how to spend the right money on the right things for marketing. That's not an easy task. So what kind of expenses did you have in getting started, and how long did it take you to come up with the kind of money you needed to really get things to take off for your business?
What I've learned in the last recent several years, which I've learned a lot about marketing, because I realized that when my phone was not ringing after I did all these amazing things, I realized that I had to learn how to be a good marketer, and I had to learn how to sell things because I didn't know how to sell things, and so I had to learn all these things. And when you learn those things, it doesn't actually take you a lot of money to have money coming in. If you want to grow, you need the money. You need to reinvest in yourself and your business. But in the beginning, it's just a matter of going out and hustling. So if you want to start a house cleaning business, make up tiny little flyers, go put them on people's doors, clean somebody's house for free for the first time. Hey, I just want you to see what I do. If you like it, great. I'll come back and do more. If not, no worries. You got it for free. That's how my lawn guy started cutting my lawn. This was when I was a carpenter and I was busy, super busy working, investing properties at night. I was working around the clock. I was an animal at that time. I was in my 20s. And this little old Italian guy comes up, reminded me of my mom's family from that side, because we're Italian on that side. And this little old Italian man comes up in his broken Italian language. And he's like, I cut your lawn for you. Free. I charge you nothing for you. I cut your lawn. If you like, I cut it more. Awesome. I'm like, oh, okay. I was like, well, okay, what? Like, I couldn't say no to the guy because he was adorable. He cuts the lawn. It looked better than it ever looked for me, even when I did get around to cutting it. And from that point on, it was $25 a week. I'm like, that would be stupid for me not to do it.
That's awesome. What did you settle in on over that period of processing and thinking about it, that as your best method for marketing yourself and for getting customers? Did you settle in on one, or do you use a variety? What worked ultimately for you that you consider your best method besides hustling?
Well, no matter what you're doing, it's always a hustle one way or the other.
Yes, it is.
Instant Manifestation Secrets we did that through joint ventures. So people who have big email lists, they emailed for us. That's a very hard business to do, but it was very, very successful for us.
You did do some cooperation with people.
Yes.
The words.
Yeah, cooperation.
Kind of like
cooperation is a great word.
Yeah. And that leads me to this question, though, is you didn't just jump into it. How did you come up with the story that you use as your pitch? I mean, you lived it, but is it hard to write it up, or was it just natural? Here's what I did, and you just told your story with 3 or 4 or 5 key points to tell your story. What did you do to come up with that motivating story that connected with people?
When a friend of mine who is also in the internet marketing expert business, he's on the business side of it. He's not the expert. He's the guy behind the scenes. And we were talking for years. We knew each other through conferences and things like that. And he's like, we really should do something together one day. And we just sort of said that for years. And then one day he calls me up and we're just talking, and we're talking about business and just kind of chatting a little bit. And I was like, well, why don't we do it now, while we're on the phone? And he's like, then we talked about some ideas. And so he's a good idea guy. He gave me a couple ideas. I was like, well, I've seen this working really, really well in the industry. So can you do something like that? I was like, I don't know. Give me a few days. And so I went down into my basement office in the house I was in at the time. So I had my office in the, my own separate little office space, home basement. And and I'm in there and I shut the doors. I shut my kids out. I shut the world off for a 4-day weekend. And I stayed in front of my laptop and I just wrote for 16 hours a day.
Wow.
And then I sent that to him, and he read through it. He's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then it took me about 2 more weeks to edit it. So I had to keep going, re-editing. As Stephen King says, great books aren't written. Great books are rewritten and rewritten and rewritten. So that's what I did. And it took me altogether about 3 weeks to write that. And it garnered us well over $500,000 in total gross revenue.
That's a fantastic story. Remember the word, Croix, collaboration.
It totally was a
collaborating with
collaboration.
people.
Yes.
That is so great. Now, in doing that, uh, what have you liked most about the collaborations, the experiences you've had? What have you liked most about being a self-employed business owner? I mean, we'll get to what you dislike because it's not always a bed of roses for sure, but what have you liked most about being self-employed and running your business and being creative with those kind of ideas and collaborations?
Collaboration is great for velocity. There's nothing like it for velocity. Either you got to have a ton of money to throw into advertising, which may or may not work. It generally does if you throw enough money at it. But collaboration works best because of the velocity. Because now you're not just you working; you have other people working with you.
Yes.
Now, through the process of that, I realized I've learned a lot. And I've also realized that some of the things that I don't like about collaboration, which is all of the moving parts and the different things that are going on. Sometimes those are difficult, and other people don't always do what you want, or they do things that you don't want them to do.
Yeah.
So it's shady marketing kind of stuff, and so I've had to be careful with that.
Well, it can be an experience. Partnerships can be great and they can be disastrous. That's for sure. What would you say to someone who's listening and watching this? What would you say to them about considering starting their own business, and in particular, in the same kind of industry you're in? What should you say in a way of not warning, but just they're listening, they're interested, they're excited to hear your story. What would you say to them if you're sitting right there at their kitchen table?
What I see with coaches and people are in the expert world like that, like coaches, consultants, authors, expert speakers, I see so many of them not believe in themselves enough to take the action that they need to take. There are people that I work with, or just friends that I help and guide them. They ask me for advice, and I tell them what they need to do, but they don't ever do it because they're not confident enough to do it. Now, somebody who comes and pays me as a client, they always get results because they're invested. Because they're investing their money, they're investing their time, and they're getting their feedback. That's why you hire a coach. But the people who just come to you and ask you for advice, most of the time they don't do anything. But the thing they need to work on most is working on their self-confidence. So being able to go out there, getting beyond their comfort zone so that they can go and ask for the money and fall on their face and get back up and try it again. Because failure is only a failure if you don't get up. But success is getting up one more time than you fall.
Those fears stop a lot of people, don't they? And yet they have the
Most.
capacity. I talk about a thing called it's possible. When I was talking with somebody that I'm coaching and I say, do you think it's possible? And then I laid out some pretty scary stuff for them. If they can't think that it's possible, I didn't say, are you going to do it? I said, do you think it's possible for you to do that? They finally say yes. Then it is. They've already accomplished the step of believing in themselves more. And that's what you did. The things that you have accomplished, somehow in the beginning, you believed it was possible to do 100 marathons. I know I could say it's possible, but I'd have to get a lot of preparation done for this fat guy to do that. But that's what you did. It starts with believing it's possible. So if you have looked past your last 10 years and all that you've accomplished, what do you think is the most important thing that you could pull out of that and say, okay, and all you're doing and all you're searching, all you're laying the foundation, beginner entrepreneur, you've got to do this or you're going to guarantee your failure. What do you think that would be?
The overall foundation to everything is working on yourself in confidence so that you don't get yourself stuck. But outside of that, the most important thing is to focus on one thing until you succeed. I see so many people that are, and I'm included, this was part of my journey figuring this out, is you're trying to do too many things at once. Make one thing succeed and then move on to the next one and then move on to the next one. Because if you're trying to do the bird shot and go everywhere, you're not going to get anywhere.
That is
and
such
you're
a great
always going to
point.
struggle.
Such a great point. Tony Robbins talks about the concentration of becoming an expert in one thing and being excited about that one thing for sure. You get a lot done as opposed to being someone that's sort of good at several, but never good at anything. And that's really what you're saying here. And what do you think were the couple things that you really became an expert at, Croix, and why you think it made you succeed? Obviously you were an expert at running and your body management and those kind of things, and you've accomplished some great things. But as far as your business, what was the one thing that you other than your confidence? That's what you're saying, is to believing and pressing forward and getting up, just like those 4 hours of pain. You kept getting up with the mistakes of businesses and had success, and then some things clicked, and you put yourself in a position to do that. Do you think it's all right here in Croix Sather's success mentality? That's what you'd say was your biggest success, is you fed your mind the right stuff?
It's always mindset. It's always mindset, because the mindset's the difference between you going out and asking for the sale, getting off the couch and going and exercising, going up to the pretty girl or the good looking guy and asking them out on a date, being a good parent, being a great community leader, going to your church or religious services. It's always your mindset that will either let you stay on the couch or get up and do something that you should do. But it's mindset, and then it's focusing on one thing. And then the third one, business wise, is that you've got to have a lot of lead generation for a product. So you focus on one product and you focus on lead generation for that one product, and you'll find success. Most small business owners do not focus on lead generation almost at all. That they get the ones that succeed generally succeed by luck more than by purpose, because they're not trying to get new customers and always worrying about new customers.
Interesting. Well, this has been fantastic. I have to tell you that it's been an absolute delight for me, as you can imagine, having that 15 months ago experience. And here we are having something coming to actual physicality in the world of the physical, as something I just attracted into my mind and actually committed to my customers that I was going to do this. And you were so gracious when I contacted you finally, and you're doing this. It's just so great. It's very obvious to me and all those I know who are going to watch this video that you are most definitely someone who has acquired a success mentality. You're an example of someone who not only believed it was possible, all those things you've done, and you believe it was possible to start and launch a business surrounding the kind of things you've done, but you have put the work in, you've attracted the dream, and then you put the work in to make it manifest in the world of the physical. So as a last comment here before I close this off, Croix, what would be some things that you'd like to share? If there's any last thoughts that you have, I'm going to hush and just let you share it to the folks who's going to watch this Insights video.
But real quickly before I share that is that I'm on your show because you took the action that most coaches don't. That you reached out to me, you followed up with me when I was too busy to follow up on myself, and you kept doing the things that a successful coach does. So that's part of the reason that we're here being successful together, is because of your success in following up and getting what you wanted to get. So
Well,
yeah, you
kind.
attracted all of this.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind.
So, but I think this I have an overriding philosophy to life, and we didn't talk about this. When I was 14 years old, I was in a terrible car accident that should have killed me.
Yes.
So I was in a coma for 4 days and weeks in the hospital, a year of physical rehabilitation, and at 14 years old, it changed my perspective on life. That so much so that I almost wish people would have a trauma accident like this. Like, of course, I don't want anybody to experience what I experienced, but I want people to experience that philosophy. So I I live as much as I possibly can. And I'll fail at things if that's what it takes to figure out if I'm going to be good at it or do something or not. Just today, when I was running with my dogs, I saw a neighbor and we were talking, and I'm going to start traveling again, going back to Colombia and Mexico and Asia, some other places. And he's like, why would you go down there? Isn't it dangerous? There's cartels, there's this, there's that. You can get kidnapped, they'll kill you, you'll get shot in the streets. And I was like, well, know this. If I don't come back and you hear a story about me being killed somewhere in my journeys, just know that I've lived and I loved every minute of it. And so if you're not doing something that is truly making you excited, that your work is purposeful, it's a mission, not just a job. If you're not happy in your personal life, you got to make the changes. You got to fix them, or you got to change, or you got to completely change it. Fix it or get out of whatever you're in. If you hate your job, get out of the damn job.
Yeah.
If you're in a toxic relationship, work on it to fix it. And if it's not possible to fix it, then get out. And it's the same thing with your life, where you're living. If you, like, a lot of people are moving out of New York City right now because of COVID and other things. And so they're realizing, because all my new neighbors here on the lake are all from New York City, and they're like, we can't take it anymore.
Life's too
making
short
change.
to stay in something you're miserable at.
And if you follow your passions and you do things you love, you'll figure out how to make a living for you. And it'll be so much more worthy and worthwhile than just making a living and, living an ordinary life.
Well, that is fantastic. Thanks again, Croix, for sharing your story and the principles you've put into practice and are living by. It's been so nice to get to know you better as a person. I'm looking forward to staying in close contact with you and watching over the next years to come your success, and hopefully my success will continue to expand. And so I wish you continued success. So there you go, my fellow entrepreneurs. We're sure to check out the rest of the interviews on this series and any of the new ones that are posted on my Living the Dream coaching website that says Insights. Go there and look at these additional videos. I think they're going to be a great tool for you. I look forward to seeing all of you on my next live Zoom coaching call. And those of you who want a private coaching session, I look forward to those as well. But until then, I want to wish all of you continued success. Goodbye.